And all these cases are not typical. We can't say that this is a planned campaign or abuse from the side of the law enforcement bodies. But this is a number of issues that some of these issues are suspicious, or maybe some abuse from the side of the business, maybe it's some misunderstanding, but we should be open and say that law enforcement bodies, they are mainly not ready to investigate properly the cases and difficult and complex abuses. And here we may say about the reforming of the service, about training of personnel. This is the complex of issues that is known to everyone, and I won't repeat all this. And for investigator from the regional department, for him, the issue of search an IT company where he comes and there's a lot of equipment, and this equipment, he doesn't understand how it works. This is a problem. If even if this person is not corrupt and wants to conduct a search in a proper way, an effective way, it happens not often, and we should say that we, as Ministry of Economic Development and Verkhovna Rada supported us, and there was a draft law on this about confiscation of service, and but the judges abused this amendment that was introduced in the law, and in Article 168, it is said that confiscation of servers and databases that are have importance for investigation. It is possible only in the case that if it is absolutely necessary, but in many cases judges allow to confiscate servers and all computer equipment and all sources of information, even notebooks. And everything connected with this can be, the police can, they are obligated to confiscate all this. And if they don't do it, there can be a criminal investigation against those people who conducted the search, that they made an abuse. So this issue is difficult and open, and we work with several associations, with Association of IT Ukraine, and we developed a number of amendments to help, and and in the law it is said that all sources of data that are necessary for investigation should be copied. Everything seems clear, but real life shows that every investigator understands the process of copying by themselves. He comes with a flash carrier, and someone just take all the computers and bring it to the to police office, and then copy the materials. And I won't tell everything about it, and this opens a field for abuse if the law enforcement officer, he is not trained, of course, and during 2 weeks he can find everything he wants, and this means that the work of the company will be stopped. And of course, some people are unaware of the facts, and judges refuse to take the. You can copy the information, you can work with the information, but when law enforcement bodies come to the court, they say, "What is this? It's not an evidence at all." That's why many law enforcement officers still confiscate the equipment. And we will initiate the changes, and we spoke with several deputies, and they support this changes. Now we are working on the text to improve this issue. And another important question, more philosophical one, it's about the procedural actions that should be taken in order not to stop the activity of the enterprise. Of course, the Ministry of Economic Development have no right to replace the judiciary and try to solve the issue, to become an intermediary between law enforcement bodies and the business and separate persons who are investigated, and whether this search is legal or illegal. This is not correct, and we would like to observe our competition and our knowledge in this field, but we will do what we need to do in order that these checks from the side of law enforcement officers, of course, in many cases they have some operative information and they should conduct investigations, because we know that no one is saint in this country, but these checks, they shouldn't stop the activity of the enterprise, that the company lose contracts and programmers lose their job. Of course, there can be problems with taxes, and they should be resolved in a civilized way. Companies should have a possibility to prove that they are right. Maybe there can be fines imposed, but it's impossible that just they stop the activity and the programmers lose their job. And in the foreign press, they write that they don't help IT sector. They that we really damage the sector, and we see that we should sign a memorandum between the law enforcement officers and the associations in order to form a permanent working group that will be in the day-to-day dialogue and will try to help find decisions for this issue. And majority of cases, and we reviewed 30 cases, the majority of them are the issues of misunderstanding. They have just to phone someone or to get some additional information, but they decided to go in other way, to go and make a real search and to force the company to provide information. So maybe the company should provide information on the licenses in order to avoid all these, because in our country businesses are trying to compete not in a fair way, and they write some anonymous notes to law enforcement bodies. And we should open lists of and contracts and with owners, with rights for intellectual property, films, content, and the business. And for me, it was strange that the business is ready to educate on this, and they understand that the law enforcement officer in the regions, they don't know computer technologies, that they are ready to educate law enforcement officers to make online courses for them, and they are ready to meet with representatives of SBU, of law enforcement, with law enforcement officers, and tell them about the activity of IT companies, what products they write, and everything else. And part of the business is even proposed, and this is their initiative, that they are ready to finance, to buy complexes for copying the information for law enforcement bodies, in order that these searches won't lead to the stopping of their business. And this is the fact. The situation where the law enforcement officers, they don't don't have such possibilities, and that's why they have that. They have operative information that some content is disseminated that can have a terrorist threat. So do you want us not to come and not to search for this information? And we don't have technical means to copy it. And we say, okay, if you need some additional hard disks or some other equipment to copy it, there's companies who are ready to finance this work. And the third block of issues is the issue of PR. In a lot of cases, law enforcement officers won't provide any explanations of their work. Large IT companies, there are thousands of people working in IT companies, and there can be one person who at his workplace carvings, or he steal money from some credit cards or disseminate pirates programs. And this can happen, and when law enforcement bodies they come and they want to arrest this person or to get some information on this person, they can't explain what they see, that in the company, the law enforcement officers came to in the company, and everyone writes on Facebook, we have a search, police came and we will be arrested. And it leads to the fact that all the processes are online and everyone knows about it. Journalists, clients, potential clients, and potential customers and colleagues, and so they speak about that they shouldn't work with this company because they are arrested. So there should be press secretaries in the law enforcement services that they should prevent these cases. If they have some maybe for example, some cases about tax evasion. Yes, this is a grave offense, and maybe there will be a court investigation or a fine. But this is not a pretext to stop the operation of the enterprise and to give the signal to foreign companies that they shouldn't cooperate with our companies, that this business doesn't pay taxes and you should break your contract with this company. And if there's some documents absent, sometimes it happens, and it's not a norm, but it is a working process, and we can't present it as a catastrophe. And law enforcement organs should maybe work hard to conduct investigations properly. And of course, we have the examples of negative information from the side of the law enforcement bodies, and sometimes there are some suspicion that this information can be used to blackmail, and it is publicized in order to blackmail and to come to us and let's communicate. Maybe you can go to court, but we disseminated the information already, so nothing can be taken out of the internet. So this information will spoil your life for years to come.
This concerns system-oriented activities which we have been conducting, and we are at the final stage already with drafting the documents, and also we, as concerns the companies which have applied to us, of course we can't help to every of the companies from which we received requests, but of course, we can demonstrate some videos how the servers or computers were returned to some one company. But anyway, we will try not to to duplicate the functions of ombudsman, but anyway to help the companies with these cases. It is very painful to look at all those problems between law enforcement bodies and the Ukrainian IT industry, because the Ukrainian IT sector is a hope for intellectual development of Ukraine, and the hope that Ukraine can override the stage when it now exports only the raw materials. And under these conditions we do all the best to support IT industry, but not to make them fear of operating in Ukraine. I hope that with our joint efforts we will succeed. So all my meetings with the law enforcement bodies and tax bodies were in a very constructive atmosphere. And now questions, please. Oksana Tarasenko, Interfax Agency. You told about the criminal law. Could you please specify what drafts, what amendments have you already drafted? What would be changed about seizure of servers for some temporary copying of information? Yes, they are articles 159 and 162 which concern copying of data in order to be used for using evidences in court. First, only the court judgment can be the good ground for seizing any servers or PCs, and if you need the data itself, for these persons you don't need to seize equipment. Equipment is needed if it is fall on someone and killed him. Then you need to make some forensic expert assessment with this equipment. But if you need the data, you just go and take the data, but not the equipment. You just issue a procedure of copying the data, and that's all. We would like to reconcile this procedure with all stakeholders. This is a matter is within the responsibility, within the competence of different law enforcement bodies, not only the Ministry of Interior. Some complaints do not concern IT business as a specific business. They are just of general nature. They could concern any other industry. Why we need the weeks for all these draft amendments? We needed so much time because we need to reconcile the amendments with all stakeholders, and we communicated with Mr. Gerashenko and Koptsev and Olga Belkova. They all told us that they would be glad to look through our amendments texts. So we will need several weeks for the wording of amendments to be looked through. Thank you, Mr. Nefyodov, for your speech. 30 cases. Is this the total number of cases you have already looked into? and whether there are any cases where no suits could be initiated against companies. Well, when we get a 30-page abstract, we can't make a decision instead of competent bodies whether the search was competent and well-grounded. When there is some court proceedings, there are two parties in every court proceedings, and in any cases maybe some pretext or some reason for search could take place, but if a complaint even is well grounded, and even if it could be the ground for a search, but anyway during such search equipment should not be seized and servers should not be seized during breaking in a forced way into offices. You can just take some screens and VCR cameras and maybe some smartphones. They are also information carriers. Then some equipment could just disappear, and there are can be broken, and nobody will be responsible for that. We can't be judges between companies and law enforcement bodies, giving our own decision of which company or body is black or white. But those actions which are well grounded, they should be conducted in compliance with the law. Do you have any questions, please? Can you count the numbers of the image component, the loss of our image? It could hardly be assessed whether companies may lose their businesses or their staff would flee from companies because of such searches that could be quantified, hardly could be quantified. But our declarations that we address this situation, they would not be efficient someday. We just should stop these practices. For some representatives of companies came to us and they said that police officers were polite and they tried not to interfere with the operations of IT company. But we, for example, have problems with the tax bodies. Maybe we need some extra elucidation for tax bodies to be issued. So every case is individual, and this is good. We don't have very numerous searches in companies, but this doesn't mean that the situation in general is good. The situation in general is bad. Our law enforcement bodies should work because unfortunately our country is now experiences hostilities and warfare, and we want our law enforcement bodies to defend us, but we should find some balance. And as being the Ministry of Economic Development, we should be on the side of business, and in terms of business entities, we should defend them from unlawful searches. We know one case when after such a search one company fled to Poland. The next briefing will be in several minutes.